When Queen of the Damned was released in 2002, it was supposed to be the next chapter in the saga of Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles, picking up where Interview with the Vampire left off. With its source material drawn from The Vampire Lestat and Queen of the Damned, two of the most beloved books in Rice's series, expectations were understandably high. What fans got, however, was a visually striking but narratively shallow adaptation that traded the book's depth and emotional complexity for style, spectacle, and a painfully early 2000s aesthetic. It had moments of brilliance, but ultimately failed to do justice to its potential. Let's start with what did work, because despite its shortcomings, Queen of the Damned wasn't completely devoid of merit. The biggest bright spot was undoubtedly Aaliyah as Akasha. Her performance was hypnotic, sensual, and commanding, especially considering this was her first, and tragically last, major film role. Aaliyah managed to make Akasha feel otherworldly and dangerous, even though the script gave her minimal dialogue and little development. Her presence elevated every scene she was in, and many viewers still cite her performance as the most iconic aspect of the film.
Really? Is that what you're going to do?
Another point in the film's favor was the soundtrack, which leaned hard into the nu metal wave of the early 2000s. Jonathan Davis of Korn composed several original songs for Lestat's band, and the aggressive, melodramatic tone of the music fit surprisingly well with the film's moody, rebellious aesthetic. The soundtrack gained a cult following of its own, and arguably did more to sell the fantasy of a vampire rock star than the actual film did. The idea of Lestat becoming a rock icon in the modern world was actually a compelling concept. It's just unfortunate that it was executed so clumsily. And visually, the movie had style. It was drenched in saturated blues and blacks, with dramatic lighting, flowing costumes, and some genuinely cool production design choices. The gothic visuals, when they worked, gave the film a seductive, dreamlike quality that matched the tone of the books, at least in fleeting moments. But unfortunately, these strengths were not enough to save the film from its many missteps. One of the most significant problems was the decision to combine The Vampire Lestat and Queen of the Damned into one film. These two novels are dense, philosophical, and full of backstory. The Vampire Lestat alone is essentially an immortal's memoir, chronicling centuries of moral struggle, historical events, and existential crises. Queen of the Damned, meanwhile, is an ensemble piece that explores the origins of vampires, their myths, and their power structures. Condensing these complex narratives into a single 100-minute film meant that everything had to be simplified, truncated, or outright abandoned. The film barely scratched the surface of the lore, and as a result, characters felt thin, motivations were unclear, and the stakes never quite landed. Stuart Townsend, stepping into the role of Lestat, previously played by Tom Cruise, was serviceable but miscast. He lacked the gravitas and charisma that make Lestat such a compelling anti-hero. Where Cruise's Lestat was cruel, curious, and almost childlike in his love of chaos, Townsend's version came off more like a brooding, eyeliner-wearing bad boy. It was a shallow interpretation of a character known for his depth and contradictions, a vampire both monstrous and deeply human. Townsend's Lestat felt more like a character in a music video than a centuries-old immortal grappling with love, loneliness, and moral decay.
Let me go.
The supporting characters suffered even more. Marius, Jesse, Maharet, and the Vampire Council were all introduced with minimal explanation and virtually no development. Characters like Cayman and Pandora, vital to the lore of the novels, were reduced to silent background figures. Maharet, one of the most important vampires in the books, barely registered on screen. And Jesse's arc, which in the novel is rich with discovery and emotional conflict, was whittled down to a forced romantic subplot that never felt earned.
So I went to sleep, hoping that the sounds of the passing eras would fade out, and a sort of death might happen.
Then there was the tone. Instead of embracing the somber, lyrical quality of Rice's writing, the film leaned hard into the MTV goth aesthetic of the time. The production design, while occasionally effective, often felt cheap and overly stylized, more Hot Topic than Haunted Cathedral. The costume and set choices may have appealed to early 2000s teens, but they clashed with the timelessness of Rice's mythology. This attempt to modernize the material ended up making the film feel more dated than eternal. The pacing was another major issue. The film moves at a breakneck speed, rushing from one scene to the next without giving anything time to resonate. Key moments, like Lestat's awakening, Akasha's resurrection, or the final confrontation, are over almost as soon as they begin. As a result, the film feels both overstuffed and underdeveloped. There's no time for tension to build, no weight to the decisions characters make, and no emotional payoff to the relationships introduced. Anne Rice herself distanced from the film prior to its release, unhappy with how much of her work had been altered or omitted. It's telling that despite her vocal disapproval of the casting in Interview with the Vampire, she ultimately embraced that adaptation, but never gave her blessing to Queen of the Damned. That disconnect between the source material and the adaptation was felt by longtime fans, many of whom were disappointed by how much was lost in translation.
I don't like repeating myself.
In the end, Queen of the Damned is a film of missed opportunities. It had the right material, the right actress in Aaliyah, and even some intriguing concepts, but it lacked the vision, patience, and reverence for the source that a story like this demands. Instead of a sweeping vampire epic, we got a muddled, style-over-substance adaptation that couldn't satisfy fans of the novels or stand confidently on its own. It remains a cult favorite in some circles, thanks to its soundtrack, Aaliyah's performance, and its nostalgic early 2000s charm. But as a piece of Gothic storytelling, Queen of the Damned fell far short of its throne.
This is but a taste of what we shall share, my love.
If you like this breakdown, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more horror deep dives, and drop a comment with your thoughts. Did Queen of the Damned deserve more love, or did it seal its fate the moment it ditched the books?